There were all these people around you and you were alone. What does that mean?
It took me a long time to realize there's a difference between being good at being alone and liking being alone.
How much are we really supposed to explore that moment that we are alone?
Solitude is always an edge space. It's always a growing edge space. And we all need to spend some time in that growing edge space.
Enneagram. When I heard the word today, it was the first time I've heard of it. What does it mean?
This is the symbol of the Enneagram, and these are 9 ways that human beings choose to be in the world. Now, all of us are capable of all 9, but it's much easier to just pick one and be one.
I think it's also helpful to understand the personality that we are talking about now. What do we mean when we say relationship?
When I talk about relationships, I talk about those people that you have conversations with, who are in your space.
Les Brown is saying, you cannot make life alive.
Like his last act of parenting was to show me how to die.
Whatever you have done or you think you have done, this moment is going to come. What really make a good relationship?
Shared experience, spending time together, doing things together, and mutual vulnerability.
How should we build that type of relationship that have the flavor all the time?
Make a list of all the things you love about Todd, because in 10 years, that's going to be the list of things you hate about him.
I want to thank you so much, Todd, for joining us in this conversation. This is how we start here. You tell me a little thing about yourself, then we're going to enter into a rabbit hole to explore who you are. Then from there, we move into what you do. The mic is yours.
Sure. Well, let me share a little bit of my story because it's a bit unique. I was an ordained minister for 20 years, but came to that through a religious experience. And after that religious experience, and I felt called to be a minister, I told my parents I wanted to be a minister. My father said, "You can't be a minister, you're terrible with people." And a part of my training was a year-long internship, at the end of which my supervisor said, "You can't be a minister, you're terrible with people." I did become a minister anyhow, but it turns out I was terrible with people. And it took me a long, long time to learn how to interact, how to help, how to lead, how to help people connect with one another. And then I discovered this tool called the Enneagram, and it gave a system, it gave a structure to all of these lessons that I had learned the hard way. And then I decided after 20 years, I was done working nights and weekends, and I retired from the ministry, and I carried forth this teaching, this tool, the Enneagram, to help other people not hit their head against the wall for years and years and years like I did, but rather to have a tool to improve their relationships and to be happier with themselves and the people in their lives.
All right. This is very interesting. There is a lot that is packed into that. So we're going to explore that. Because here, as you might have already noticed, we do a lot of storytelling here. We just love the story where you talk about yourself, where you are coming from and all of that. They are fun for us. So let's get a step backward now. Okay. Let's get a step back to where we're coming from. So what do you remember of the environment around you as you are growing up, a little you growing up?
Oh, wow. What a great question. I am the youngest of 5 children, but they are yours, mine, and ours. So I have 1 half brother from my mom and 3 half brothers from my dad. And so it was a very mixed up growing up. And I got kind of lost in that. I was also a lot younger than all of them. So it was an environment that was a bit chaotic, I would say, but one where all the avenues had been explored in front of me. So when I turned 16, my parents bought me a car and they were like, "We're done. We got to the 5th one. Drive yourself where you need to go." And they actually bought an RV and started traveling around the country, leaving me at home alone. So I it was a part of my life that was kind of alone. Even though I had all these people around me, it was still a kind of a loneliness in my upbringing.
All right. There is something powerful there. There were all these people around you and you were alone. What does that mean?
Well, I thought that that was normal. I think a lot of us kind of graduate childhood thinking that what we go through must be what everybody goes through, and what we want and what we, would choose is what everybody wants and what everybody would choose. So it took me a long time to realize there's a difference between being good at being alone and liking being alone. Because I got very good at being alone through all of that chaos in my childhood. But it took me probably into my 30s before I said, gosh, I don't really like being alone. Just because I can do it doesn't mean that I like to do it. And that's really when I discovered that I was going to have to do some work on myself if I was going to start having my marriage was going to improve and my relationships, friendships, work relationships are going to improve.
Okay, I've got some question there. I remember this should be a couple of years ago now. Okay, I'm very new in this work that I'm doing of this self-improvement journey and all of that. So I think I took out an entire year talking about just you. And I have a series of articles. Okay, in our A-Classes Media, we have over 2,000 articles there. It's just growing. So I talk about solitude, which is finding yourself. And this is particularly important for me because all my family are in Nigeria. I'm here alone in Italy. So the term itself should make sense to me. And also, based on the work that I've done, for over 10 years, I've been collecting data about the presence of Africans in northern Italy. So we're talking about immigrant people that have come here. Some of them have grown old here. Some of them, of course, have relocated some other places. A lot of them, of course, have their children, and they have had their children grow up. There will be a transformation on their part. So this question of solitude is something that come around again and again. And also, when I take the experience out of Italy, I started to talk to many other people in the African diaspora because now I have done over 1,000 interviews, just talking to people, collecting their story. It's something that is still going around, whether you are looking at the UK, Canada, or the United States, where I have a lot of people that I've interviewed. Is a topic that is coming around again and again. So the exploration, how much are we really supposed to explore that moment that we are or we think we are alone? Where maybe there are some people, you see, the question was coming from the fact that you have a lot of people around you, but you are alone. How much are we supposed to look at that? Is it something negative? Is it positive? How much of it is negative and how much of it should we embrace? So could you please take all around there?
Yeah, great question. And let me tell you off the bat, I really deeply connect to what you're talking about because I myself am an immigrant. I lost my home in a wildfire about 3 years ago in the United States, and my family and I decided to move to Europe. So oh, thank you. I appreciate that. We've moved on. In fact, we've made lemonade out of the lemons.
That's a good one. That's a good one. Good one.
We live in Portugal now, and I really deeply connect to this migrant experience of being in a strange culture, not having your people, your family around you, and there is a solitude that is inherent in this experience. But here's what I would say about solitude and its value and how much of it we need or should have. I think solitude is always an edge space. It's always a growing edge space. And we all need to spend some time in that growing edge space because if we always stay where we're comfortable, then we don't mature and we don't gain new skills and we don't know ourselves well. So it's good for us in that way. On the flip side, we shouldn't, any of us, spend all of our time in that edge space because it is stressful and it does require a lot of our resources, mental, emotional, spiritual. So if there's a way to strike a balance, to have the good connections, to have a support network, whether it's digital or if you can make trips, or you need to both have that growth. It's very important, and I think those of us who have this experience of being in another culture will attest. We've all grown from it. And on the flip side, it's not something we can just weather 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, because it is tough, and we need each other.
All right, that's so true. That's so true again. As human beings, we're not supposed to live alone. We're supposed to live with other people. We're supposed to share. This thing is called experience. No, if it is just you alone,
Yes.
you are not really doing anything. So I remember, for example, that I was in some of those series of articles, because there are actually series. There are many articles on the topic. No, I was saying, look back in our history. Look at somebody like Jesus Christ. No, yeah, in our history. No, in the context of religious test, or look at Muhammad, or look at Buddha. All these individuals at the point need to retire to a place of solitude,
Yes.
where they need to commune with something bigger than just the crowd that is around them, which is to say that there is something special about that time
Yes.
where you are alone, almost nude, almost naked. You are you and the entire universe as a witness. And you need to ask certain questions and respond to certain questions about who you are. And of course, now if you look at the transformation according to, is it Matthew or Mark, you will see that by the time Jesus returned from there, the mission, everything sort of changed now. Because until we move to that part, call it darkness, call it dark part or a difficult part, where you need to confront this thing alone. I'm not saying you can't do this in a crowd. It isn't possible for you to do in a crowd. You need
Yes.
this moment of truth, call it like that. So there's something change. So where I'm going within this area, because I remember before we started to record just now, I was saying that the conversation is more like within personality, relationship, and also
Yes.
self-improvement. So
Yes.
how are we supposed to leverage this part? Yeah, please.
I was just gonna, I think that this tool that I use that was so transformational for me, called the Enneagram, is really helpful in those dark moments, in those alone moments, because I found for me, for many years, when I would have those moments, I was sort of trial and error. Like I didn't know how to grow. I didn't know what I was supposed to be doing or looking for or learning. And so sort of a lot of wandering around, bumping into things. What the Enneagram provides is an insight into ourselves so that when you have that time for work, when you're in that darkness, there is purpose, there is structure, there is a direction so that you can be constructive and purposeful in that time rather than, although, they do say not everyone who wanders is lost. But some of us do prefer to have some direction and know, all right, if I'm going to be better, what does that look like? What does that mean? Help me, give me some guidance. I like that quote by Saint Benedict, who said, "The man who is his own master is the disciple of a fool." And that's part of why I look to this system and to have others help me use it in those moments of solitude and growth.
All right. Enneagram. I told you,
Yeah.
when I heard the word today, it was the first time I've heard of it. What does it mean? How did it come about? Did you develop it yourself? Can you give us a background about it?
I can. And my wife is always tells people, be careful when you ask me about the Enneagram, because I can go on a little long about it. So I'll try to be brief.
No, go as much as you want.
In a nutshell, no, I did not create it. It's about 2,500 years old or more. Ennea is the Greek word for 9. Gram just means symbol or writing. And it is a symbol that embodies how change takes place in the universe. I know that's very esoteric. I know that's a grand idea, but these 9 points of change are actually places where each of us gets caught, because human beings, we don't like change. We like things to stay the same. This is the symbol of the Enneagram. And these are 9 ways that human beings choose to be in the world. Now, all of us are capable of all 9, but it's much easier to just pick one and be one. This is something we do as tiny little children as we learn how to adjust and adapt and get our needs met. So some of us are very principled in the world. We strive to do things the way that they should be done. We want to be good, upstanding, right citizens. And other people, like my wife, she happens to be a type 2, super helpful and nurturing, the first person there setting the tables up, helping out. If somebody's hurting, they're there with a hug. Some people in the world are type 3. They're reaching out. They want to be the best. They're always striving to succeed, and they have visions of projects and goals. Some people are very deeply authentic to themselves. They're artistic, and maybe they're a little quirky, and they really want to stand out and be, I am me, right? I'm not anybody else in the world. I happen to be type 5. Some of us are very analytical. We look at the world and we break it down into little pieces, and we understand cause and effect, and we make predictions, and we look at data. But those of us in that section often tend to struggle with social relationships because we don't see people as people. We see them as bits and bytes and ones and zeros. And so we struggle to have real connection. Some people are type 6, which is the desire to be ready for whatever's going to happen next in the world, which is a wonderful thing to do and to be, but it can consume them such that they become people that are really worried, or they spend a lot of effort preparing for things that don't ever happen. And then there's 7s who are kind of the opposite. They're just like, life is a party, let's have fun. And they just throw caution to the wind, and they just do whatever they feel like doing. Some people in the world exist like bulls in china shops. That's our type 8s, right? They're powerful. They make things change around them. But again, sometimes at what cost in terms of relationships. So these are people who could change the world for good, but they sometimes step on toes doing it. And then there's type 9, and these are the very easygoing people who just want everyone to get along, and they find ways to reconcile and unite people and different ideas, and they understand where people are coming from, and they're really deeply connected to the group as a whole. So that's a sort of a quick tour of the 9 types. Obviously, it's a much more detailed system than that. But really, if your listeners want to take anything away from it, rather than try to find yourself in those 9 right out of the gate, the thing to know about the Enneagram is that it thinks about human beings as having 3 kinds of intelligence, all of which are essential for survival, all of which all of us have, but we don't have them in equal measure. The first kind of intelligence is head intelligence, and that's just the kind of thing you might think of as intelligence, looking at patterns, making predictions, cause and effect, really head kind of actions and processes. But the brain doesn't come online until we're 25 years old. It takes that long to develop. And so in the beginning of our lives, we need a different kind of intelligence. We come out of the womb and we need to immediately connect with the people who will care for us. And so we have what's called a heart center intelligence. And it's about connection, and it's about feeling, and it's about people, and it's about identity. Who am I in connection to these people? Who should I be in connection to these people? And then we all have a third intelligence that's called the body center intelligence, which is about getting our needs met. And I'm hungry, or I'm thirsty, or the world isn't the way that it is supposed to be. We aren't treating each other fairly and just, and that's not right. There's this sense of justice and right and wrong that's deep in the body center, the gut center. So we need all 3 of these, but we don't have them in equal measure. So my wife happens to be a heart-centered person. She's a 2, like I mentioned. She loves, she supports, she reads people's emotions. She knows what they're feeling even better than they do. I'm a head-centered person. I think about the world as data, and I analyze it, and I like systems. So we all have strengths, but we all have deficits because of this relationship between the kinds of intelligence that we use. And when we have these moments of solitude and these moments of growth, knowing who we are, knowing the thought patterns we fall into, knowing the self-talk that we use, knowing what triggers us, are all opportunities for us to grow and become more whole. Because while we fall into the pattern of one of those 9 personality types, it does not sum up who we are. We are capable of all of those aspects of being human, but much of it requires practice. A lot of it's uncomfortable, and knowing how to get from where I am to where I want to be is something the Enneagram can give us insight into.
There's a lot there, and
there's a lot there. I'm sorry, I knew there would be.
Of course, we're not going to let it go like that. We have you, so you're going to have to help us, and you're going to help us navigate it. It's very important. And I think it's also help us to understand the personality that we are talking about now at the end of the day, and also relationship. If our relationship is even part of what you mentioned there, relating with other people. And I think we have also made mention of that even before we knew of this powerful instrument, that you don't live all by yourself alone.
No.
Okay. Now, in my 5-part book series, The Storytelling Mastery, at the point I was saying, even for you to know what is called food, it need to be based on the work of other people. It is not about you. It's not about me. I did not discover whom I am, my name. My reference in the world have been created by other people before I was born.
Yes.
So that if I say this is what it is, it's based on the experiences of other people. It is not just me. I am here just to play a role in this big enigma that we want to call it. No? So I think this is really very, very important.
Now, it's beautiful the way that you have put this notion that we do not exist independently. That's a groundbreaking insight for so many people who see their partners or their children or their coworkers as objects to be manipulated or dealt with, rather than people to be connected with. And it's a vastly different experience when we see the cashier or the neighbor or whomever or our spouse as a human being who also comes from a history and a worldview and may not be the same as ours, and that's okay. We're allowed to have different ways of being. We can still connect.
At the end of the day, it's very humbling now to understand that you are part of the whole. You are not the whole of it. No, it is important because it helps us to also let us respect the perspective of other people. That just because I see it like this doesn't mean this is the way every other person see it. Because every other person is not just exactly me. They are also them. Just like I can claim to see it, they can also claim to see it. Only that they are seeing it from their perspective, and I'm seeing it from my perspective. If I understand, therefore, that I am part of the whole, and they're also part of the whole, all we just need to be able to live is to respect each other, because we are all part of it.
You know, I'm getting chills as you're speaking because I resonate so deeply with your message. And the reason I use the Enneagram in relationship coaching, almost everyone, by the way, uses the Enneagram for personal growth. And it's an excellent tool, maybe the best for that. But I use it in relationships as well because it's easier to have respect. And I'll go a step further. I think we also need empathy. And it's easier to have empathy for other people when we get a peek behind the curtain as to why they see the world the way they do. And when I learned the Enneagram, my wife and I had been married for 12 years, I think. And all of a sudden, all of our conversations changed. All of the way we fought changed. All of the way we parented changed. Because for the first time, I was like, oh, I understand where she's coming from. It doesn't mean I condone it. It doesn't mean I believe the same things. It doesn't mean I agree with it. But it does mean that there's an internal logic and a consistency, and what she believes and how she sees the world and what she wants is valid in her little system of personality. And this peek behind the curtain, there's a moment with almost every couple I've ever worked with of the jaw dropping, being like, that's why my spouse is the way they are. And all of a sudden there's space for empathy. All of a sudden there's this compassion that's natural in the heart. And it's a beautiful, beautiful thing to witness.
Thank you so much for that. Now, I'm beginning to see a pattern here, that it is important for us to even know where we are in this frame of thing, because if we don't know who we are, it's going to be difficult for us to even relate with other people, because it's like we are confused now. If we are confused, then we think every other person is confused. But if we know where we are, who we are, and we also know where we are standing, then it becomes easy. When you want to lift out your hand to reach out to people, you need to know what are you standing on that you want to lift out your hand to reach people. Because if you are standing on a dead wood that is going to break any moment, if you lift out your hand to raise somebody, the wood will break. You both of you are going down. Go.
I would add that when we don't know who we are, when we don't know our own way of being in the world, we are stuck repeating patterns, and we wonder why the same things happen to us over and over again. Why do I have the same fights with my partner? Why do I date the same kinds of people? Why do I always struggle to whatever it might be? And without that introspection, that self-awareness that we grow and learn from our personality type, We really don't have another choice. We only know what we know. When we are made aware of what our triggers are, why we do the things we do, how we talk to ourselves, which pushes us in certain directions over and over again, that awareness gives us the chance to make a different choice. I like to say awareness is the first step toward transformation, and often it's the only step that you need, because just being aware is enough to go, oh, wait a minute. Do I want to do what I've always done, or do I want to make a different choice this time?
Thank you so much for that. Now, the how is important. I wanted to spend some time there. How do you know who you are within that circle that you design for those different personalities? How do you find yourself in it?
Well, there's two ways. You can take a test. There's a number of tests online that you could go and you could take. I discourage that approach because I think what ends up happening is people, when the computer tells you what your type is, and then you read about that type, you're likely to pick and choose what in that description sounds like you and what doesn't sound like you. And then it becomes about how accurate the description of you is. That's not how the system is most useful to you. Instead, what I do with my couples and in my program, and I work with individuals as well, not only couples, but we learn the system sort of from the ground up. And I do that over the course of 2 sessions, so it's not super intense. But what happens is you get an understanding of what does the heart system do? What parts of life does it affect? What does the head intelligence do? What parts of life does it affect? You get a sense of who you are, and then you tell me which of those 9 types is the one that sounds the most like you. Because when you say, I am a 5, that's my personality type, you are making almost an act of confession, because you're laying claim to it. You're saying, this is my strengths. This is also my weaknesses. This is the way I talk to myself. And so it's not about whether the profile is accurate or inaccurate, as much as it's about embracing all that it means to be that type. And I will say, in the world of the Enneagram, all personality traits are value neutral. It's how we use them. So whether we are strong in the world like 8s are, well, we can use strength for good. We often talk about the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. being a type 8, and he used that power. I mean, what a powerful guy he was, but he used that power for good. So we can, whatever our personality traits might be, we can learn to use them in ways that benefit us and benefit those around us. But first, we have to, like you were saying before, lay claim to where we are. And that means owning the shadow side of each type too. So rather than take a test online, I invite people to learn about the system and find themselves in it. And it's not super complicated to do.
Thank you so much for that, Todd. I really appreciate this value that you brought to the table today. I want to repeat again, it's the first time I'm hearing about that, and I'm going to learn about it more after this conversation. You see, there is something that I usually tell people. Okay, I teach people about the power of story and how to leverage the power of story in their work. And of course, it starts with knowing what your story is. Where are you coming from? Who are you? And understanding a lot of things about you before you even came here help you understand where you are. Now, at the end of all this, I usually tell people, storytelling, the power of storytelling is neutral. It is not good or bad. It is what you do with it that determines whether it is good or bad. People, when they look at that, they sort of like, we thought it was good or it was bad. No. We are saying that this is an instrument. The instrument depends on what you want to do with it. If you want to use it for bad, it will be effective for you. If you want to use it for good, it will be effective for you too. The question therefore is, who are you in the usage of this tool? I wanted to spend some time there helping people to understand about the neutrality of these tools that they have, because people think that when you tell them that this thing is effective, equally mean the value, the human value. Like this is, it doesn't include that. It is neutral. You see, water is neutral. Water can kill you. Water can actually wipe out an entire city. But water
Yeah.
can also help these people to survive. In fact, it is because of water that we are alive. You
Yes.
see, electricity is also neutral.
Yeah.
People can die by electricity, no?
Yeah.
To those people, that is not a good use of electricity. But without electricity, we will be in darkness. It is not just the electricity. It is what do we do with that?
Yep.
Knife is good, but not when you use it to kill another person.
Right.
It is not a knife. It is you. I want you to spend some time there helping people understand about this neutrality of this tool that you have shared with us today.
Yes. And, I think I would even extend this beautiful metaphor that I love of the knife and water and electricity, even to things like being analytical. Like I'm a 5 and I'm analytical. And it really serves me well, spreadsheets and business plans or personal finances or whatever. It's super helpful. But when my wife comes home from work and says, my boss was really mean to me today, if I respond from my head center because I'm analytical, which, by the way, this is a true story, and I actually did. I said to her, well, did we write everything down for HR so we can report your boss? And the way that he treated you was a very analytical response. Really, what I needed to do was respond from the heart. Because what I should have said was, do you need a hug? You want to talk about it? Tell me what happened. Can I pour you a glass of wine? Really knowing what tool to use in each moment is what enables us to use them well. So, and being analytical, helpful. Being compassionate, also helpful. But they can get us into trouble, just like water and electricity, when we use them in the wrong ways. And that's a big part of the Enneagram. I talked earlier about how I talked about a heart-centered person or a head-centered person or a body-centered person. We really have kind of a big center of intelligence and a medium-sized center of intelligence and a small center of intelligence, one that we don't use a lot. And the goal of Enneagram work is to have all three of them be the same size. Bring the too big one down, bring the too small one up. That enables us to use the right intelligence for the right situation. And that's using these tools in ways that they serve us rather than in ways they can harm us.
Thank you for that. Thank you so much for that. I appreciate that. I really do. Now, before we get into a relationship, because that is where I would like you to spend some time there. But before we get there, I have a question for you. Now, you're an expert in the Enneagram and this particular tool that you have really explained to us. Now, for you who is an expert, assuming today is where you are going to get into a relationship, how is it going to influence your choice of a relationship and also the type of personality that individual might be? Okay, this way I'm sort of moving around.
Yeah.
Is it that maybe when I know my type of personality within this square, then I look for another person that is like me so that we can relate well? So can you say something more about that?
Yeah, that's a good point. The mysteries of how we choose our partners. I wish I had the answers to that. I could really help a lot of people, I'm sure. What I think the way I'd like to answer that is to say there is no best or right pairing. I'm a 5, my wife is a 2. But instead, what we have to recognize is that whatever the pairing, we're going to have complementary aspects and we're going to have differences. Whether I was with another 5, 2 5s together, we would complement each other and we would have differences. It's less about the personality guiding the choice that you make, as it is about studying your personality and your partner's personality, guiding you in addressing the obstacles that will naturally arise. There is no human relationship that is without conflict or obstacles. So it's not that conflict's another one, by the way, isn't it, Obehi? It's not a bad thing. It's not an evil thing, conflict in and of itself, right? We need it. It's part of life. It's part of how positive change is affected. But we want to handle it like a knife. We want to handle conflict in a way that is responsible and is intentional and that we accomplish what we want to accomplish with it rather than hurting people. So knowing the personality type is more about learning to be you well, to cope with your personal drawbacks of your personality style, to cope with them well, to cope with your partners well, rather than to find the ideal one or something like that. Ideal is a little bit of a myth.
That's a good one. That's really a good one. You see, I was laughing a lot when you brought in the idea of conflict, and that is not just a good thing, that we need it. I remember, for example, a couple of months ago, in our LinkedIn Audio Live event, we said we're going to talk about the role of conflict in storytelling. And some people will say, but during the conversation, people, but how can you be talking of bringing conflict? Conflict. We want to avoid conflict. I will tell the individual, you can't do that. Without conflict, how are you going to tell story? Because you are going to say, every story need to have conflict. If you don't have a conflict, it's very flat. Nobody is interested in a flat thing. Nature is not flat. There is no flat line or straight line in nature. All the natural lines are full of ups and downs. A good example, look at water. If you take a picture of water, it's up and down. Up, down. That is why you can hear the water shouting sometimes, because it reached that point. What about mountain? Look at the mountain. The mountain is ups, down. That is the natural flow. Okay, you see, anywhere you go, if it's a natural frame, then it must be up and down. Up and down is conflict. Either it go, then it go there. Then it go up again, then it go down again. It's just the way nature is. So we cannot take away the conflict from the equation. Then it is not balanced anymore.
And conflict is definitely the way that we affect change, because without it, everything just stays the same, right? It's flat. So if we are unwilling to push ourselves, if we're unwilling to speak up for our needs because we're afraid, oh no, my partner is going to be angry with me if I have needs, if I speak up about them, then we really are just stuck being exactly where we are. So conflict can actually serve us like it serves in storytelling. It moves things forward. It provokes change. Uncontrolled or haphazardly, that change can be bad. But intentionally and with insight into how to do it well, it's the only way to make things better.
Absolutely. I remember one time I was having an argument with a guy in my house. I rented my flat. Okay, there are some space here. I rented one room because then I was not married, so I have a space. So I rented one room to somebody. So because it's a neighbor now, we talk from time to time. Sometimes we enter into very deep political argument. So we're talking about life. Then I was telling him, it's much older than me. I was telling him that, see, life, we are not supposed to know everything. Everything is not supposed to just be okay. There are challenges in life. And it is good that there are challenges. It is good that in life, you don't know everything. That sometimes you take a step, that step can hurt you. Sometimes you take a step, that step can be good for you. What is important is not the step hurting you or you getting something out of it. The question is, do you learn anything from it? Did you get the lesson? If you don't get the lesson, you repeat it again and again and again and again. But he was saying, but we should have just know everything. I said, if we know everything that is going to happen, that life is going to be very boring. It will not have any sense. It will not have any beauty. Like you just give birth to a child. You know everything from the day that child is born to the day that they die as an old person, old woman or old man. Everything that is going to happen. What is it going to be? A simulation? That is not a life. Life is that sometimes you see no road anymore. Everywhere is blocked. The question is, what do you do? Go back to your head. There are a lot of information in your head that tells you, what do you do when you get to this part? You don't have any manual, but figure out things. As you are figuring it out, you are bringing more information to the universe. That is good for not only you, for the entire existence.
Yes. I like to think of music in this this sort of topic, and if we sing only one note, how boring, right? How lifeless that is. So just even one person singing, we have to change notes. But when we have two people singing, or when we have multiple instruments playing, those instruments aren't even playing the same notes at the same time or singing the same notes at the same time. Sometimes they're singing notes that sound really good together. Sometimes they sing notes that purposely don't sound good together. And then when they resolve, when they move to one, there's joy, there's emotion, there's life. So this tension and release is an inherent part of nature, as you pointed out. It's an inherent part of growth, and it's what makes things interesting and meaningful. So we need these contrasts and these differences. When we can appreciate them, respect them, be empathetic toward the guy who's playing a different note that doesn't sound good to the note I'm playing, that's where we really begin to work in unison and create this masterpiece of music that is more than any one of us could do.
Absolutely. A lot of things that you're saying, they are really they are resonating with me a lot. Okay. In the course of our research, the journey about the presence of Africans in northern Italy, we have published 2 books. So in one of the books titled The Color of Our Children, I was talking about interculturality in Italian schools because it had to do with the Italian school, but in Veneto region where I live. So inside this book, I was painting a picture of what an interculturality should be or should mean. I say, to understand what it is, you need to understand, you need to be comfortable with another word that you're not usually comfortable with. Contamination. But I say you need to see it from a positive point of view now. In that you need to put a little bit of white, a little bit of black, a little bit of green, a little bit of yellow. That is what makes a piece of art beautiful. I say if you take away this different particle, this different part, it's very boring. It's like also again in nature. You see, I say take a piece of art, any piece of art, start with a contamination. Otherwise, you don't even understand what is made of, whether it is music, where you are hearing do, 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 then you hear, then you suddenly hear nothing, then it come again. Or a piece of art where you see a line coming, that line is yellow. Suddenly the line disappear because another line of color have taken it, then the line come up again. Of course, I am zooming on it now in a way that somebody can see, but that is what the artist is doing. It is bringing a lot of contamination into things, but organized in a way that it can make sense to you. Give it a form, give it a taste, give it a twist. If we don't do that, it will be uniform, and there is no beauty in a uniform. Anyway, I could go on like that because you are really stirring me up. That I really thank you for that. Now, relationship.
Yeah.
What do we mean when we say relationship? I'm interested in this topic.
Well, you pointed it out earlier, and I think you put it beautifully, that everything we are, we have inherited. So we are in relationship even before we are born. We're in relationship, obviously, to our mother. We're in relationship to our parents, to our family, to our community, but even to the whole world. Everything that has come before us informs who we are. But I think in a more practical sense, many of us have some very primary relationships in our lives. Most notably, our romantic partners who we spend a lot of our time with, who we build our lives with, our parents, our children, maybe our siblings. These are the relationships that we are most aware of, and that really we have the most agency in how they turn out. And there's research, study after research study that shows the happier we are with our relationships, the happier we are in total. We report contentment with our lives, with our jobs, with whatever it might be, when we're happy with our relationships. So really to focus our time and our energy on our romantic partner, on our children, on our families, is the way for us to feel better about ourselves and to be happier, wake up in the morning ready to get up and contribute to the world that day. So when I talk about relationships, I talk about those people that you have conversations with, who are in your space, who you need to account for in your decision making, because that is an essential, maybe the essential part of being human. And I don't want to be too morose here, but in my 20 years as a minister, I walked the journey of death with many, many people, as you might imagine. And all of them said, you know what matters in the end is love. What matters in the end is family. What matters in the end is people. And so I really want to carry that wisdom that I was so blessed to be the recipient of, to walk and hold hands with people in those final days and hours. And share that with people while we still have time, while we still have decades in front of us, to say, listen, this is what matters. And it doesn't have to be a mystery, and it doesn't have to be impossible. There is a way to approach your relationships in ways that are satisfying to you and to the people that you are in relationship with.
The journey of death. Anyway, that is not the topic of today, but because we made mention of it, that could be interesting for somebody to learn about. You see, there is nothing that happened to us that is irrelevant. Every part of it is important because we need to learn. We don't talk about death sometimes. Why? Maybe because we are afraid of it. But you see, the only thing that is sure for us, if you are living, is death. There is no way you are going to avoid it. It's going to come. Les Brown is saying, you cannot make life alive. If you are still living, meaning you haven't paid yet, you are going to pay the ultimate price, which means you are going to die one day. But of course, how do we philosophize that now? How we understand it might be different, but that thing is going to happen. If it is certain 100% that is going to happen, we should be talking more about that. What do you mean the journey of death? Could you explain it more?
Take a moment to add a little levity. We have a saying in America that the only things in life that are certain are death and taxes. So it's not just death. It's also the government taking its slice. But with that said, when I talk about the journey of death, I mean typically most of us will receive news at some moment. There will be a day where a doctor will tell us that we are facing an insurmountable health obstacle. Now, for some, death is very sudden, but for most of us, it's this. There's this moment of realizing, okay, we've exhausted all of our chances at beating whatever I'm facing, and now I'm just going to have to make peace with that this is what's remaining. And some of us have years, and some of us have months, and some of us have less. But all of us, when we reach that stage, we begin to reflect. We naturally begin to reflect on our own lives, on our relationships, on what we're leaving behind, on what we've done. And that is the journey. It's very introspective. People respond to it in very different ways. Obviously it depends on how aware you are. Some people lose their mental faculties. That changes the journey. But I want to lift up, as we've talked about so much in our conversation today, that when one person receives that news and begins that journey, it's really a journey for all of us. I was rather young when my father passed away. We were given about 100 days from the time of his diagnosis until his passing. And all of his sons and his wife, my mother, and all of the people that meant so much to him and to me and to all of us, we're all affected. We're all on that journey. One day we will be at the center of it, but it's not a journey we walk alone. And it's not a journey we only walk once, because to love another person is to invite that into your life. I think about that. If you have a pet, we have some dog. We lost a dear family dog about a year ago, and he'd been with us. But when you invite a dog into your life, you're inviting that. You know that day is going to come. But you do it still. You have that animal because of the joy and the companionship and all of the wonderful things that it brings. And I think all of our relationships are that way. So that journey of death is not something that is only for the person who is dying, but it's that process of measuring the relationships, measuring what's being left behind, what remains unsaid and what needs to be said. There's a lot of things that come into sharp focus in those moments.
Thank you for that. That is important. That is important lesson. Yeah, talking of the lesson, um, I like to ask, what key lesson did you take away from that experience? Because things are going to happen to us that we cannot control. Life
Mm.
is full of this series of events. We are not going to remain with just one event and remain there. No, things are going to happen. But are we picking up the lessons along the way? Because we're going to take it along. And again, talking about the journey of death, you're going to pass it on also to other people because you are not going to live forever. In about 150 years from this moment that I'm talking, all of us, the 800 billion people in the world, all of us will be dead. All of us. There is nothing we can do about that. But the question is, what are we going to leave behind for others that are going to be here? Because we cannot take this. I cannot take Italy. I cannot take Italy with me. You cannot take where you are with you. People are still going to be here. We are not going to consume this world like just, we are not going to be able to do that. So the lesson, what key lesson did you take away from there that is probably, I am certain that is helping you today, helping you in what you are doing? Share with us.
How can I choose just one lesson that I've learned from my father or his passing? But I think perhaps, it was before I had children of my own that he passed. And I now have 3. And I think that one of the things that I learned was that he continued to be a parent to me. Like his last act of parenting was to show me how to die. Like, he did it with dignity. He did it with compassion. And now as I am a parent and my youngest is 14 and she's uninterested in anything that I have to say, any of my wisdom or insight, or, I'm the dumbest human being on the planet to my 14-year-old. But I know that if I live another 20, 30, 40, 50 years, whatever, I'm always modeling to my children. So I need to be intentional and aware and purposeful because I continue to be ahead of them in this game of life, in this journey of life. And they're going to look at me and they're going to look at the choices I make and the way that I handle things when they come up on them. Because I continue in my own parenting journey to look at my father and draw on all of the lessons that he taught me, including that final one.
Thank you so much for that. I love that. That is really rich, that experience, that moment, that lesson that we learned that we pass on. All right, I have a question about relationship, because even this too is not out of relationship. This is part of relationship. In fact, one of the most fundamental part is this. Because whatever you have done or you think you have done, this moment is going to come. It's also about the relationship. Who is going to be there around you? This is a relationship. Who are you going to leave behind? This is a relationship. What is your name going to mean? This is a relationship. Because like I'm saying before, you cannot consume this word. This word is going to consume you. That is how it is made. All right. What really make a good relationship?
Wow. Okay. What makes a good relationship? Well, I think I'll answer the question this way. I find that healthy, happy relationships, and I think ultimately that's what maybe all of us want is to have a relationship where it's a healthy one, we communicate well, we understand each other, and it's a happy one where both people are satisfied. My wife and I like to say, the relationship is going well when both people think they have the long end of the stick. That expression, getting the short end of the stick, means that things aren't going well. But if the both partners feel like they're holding the long end of the stick, then the relationship is going really well. And I find that those kinds of relationships, those happy, healthy relationships, have 2 key ingredients: shared experience, spending time together, doing things together, and mutual vulnerability. We do not connect with other human beings around our strengths and our successes. We connect with other human beings around our struggles and around our failures. And when we're able to be vulnerable with our partners and they with us, there is a deep, deep connection and a mutual support that naturally arises. Now, for there to be that mutual vulnerability, we need that time spent in shared experience, because it builds up trust and it builds up familiarity and it builds up compassion. So when we have time spent together and mutual vulnerability, I find that those are the key ingredients that set couples on the right path to have a really strong, healthy, happy relationship.
All right. Now, you help people, couple and also individual, to straighten up their relationship. Because this is not easy, I must say. It's not easy. If you are an adult for any considerable amount of years, you will know it's not easy. Because you need to live with somebody who is completely different from you, who have lived. You don't just pick a young child in terms of romantic relationship. You pick an adult already formed, with all the flaws and beauties of life.
Yep.
Now you're going to live with that individual. At some time, they don't reveal everything to them, because you don't reveal everything too. That is what life is. Because in life, there are millions of decisions that we need to make. We cannot just, like, for example, I bring up something, we talk about the content, the name, where is it coming from? Only about this, right? If we write a book about it, we cannot hold it. So we need to do approximation. Now, in life, when you get married, when you are married, now you begin to open the pages one after the other. Because you better leave some things to discover. Otherwise, it's going to be boring. If everything is already known now, what is there to know? So life should also have a little bit intrigue. So the question is, how should we build that type of relationship that have the flavor all the time? I'm not saying just bad surprises, but the flavor, we talked about the ups and downs before. Yeah. How do we make that? Yeah.
Well, I like to say that to be human is to grow. We change over our lives. We learn, we stumble, we notice, as you were talking about, we use our brains to say, okay, I've been here before. What did I learn? How am I going to do it differently? But in relationship, because both people are going to grow over time, that's just what it means to be human. Then in a relationship, we're faced with the choice: are we going to grow together or are we going to grow apart? We can't ask whether we're going to grow or not. That's given. But whether we're going to grow together or grow apart. And so there's an aspect of openness to the fact that we don't know everything in this world, and things are still constantly unfolding, and a sense of being in it together that really helps us to grow together. When we grow individually, when we don't talk, when we get frustrated, or when we aren't vulnerable with our partner or they with us, that's when we can grow apart. And I like to tell this story, the true story. My wife's sister pulled her aside just before we were married and said to her, make a list of all the things you love about Todd, because in 10 years, that's going to be the list of things you hate about him. She had been married a while before we did. But there was some deep, deep truth in that, because it's not only that we grow and change, but we also, what we love or what we dislike grows and changes. And so there's very things about our partner that we just found magical can become frustrating or grating on us over time, and the reverse. So it's important to start the journey with a notion that we're in it together for the ride, whatever it might bring, rather than now I've found this person who is the person I want, and now they're going to stay the same, and I'm going to get what I want from them, and it's a fixed thing. People aren't convenience machines where you could put in the coins and push A4 and the Coca-Cola pops out. That's not how human beings work. So we have to be in this flow or process with them, rather than think of them as fixed and they're always going to get the same thing from them that we have in the past. That's not how it works.
Yeah, I love that. the I think the neuroscientists they call it. I forgot the name that they call it. That the brain is always able to learn a lot of things. No, neuroplasticity.
Plasticity,
Yeah.
neuroplasticity, yes. And the latest neuroscience shows that it continues up to the moment of death. Like we are always able
Can you
to.
imagine that? Can you imagine that?
And it really, it's mind-boggling. But to me, it's extremely hopeful. And I think the most powerful motivator when we're in relationships that are difficult, that we're struggling with, is we have to have a sense of hope. If we don't think that it's possible the relationship can be better, we won't try. And so hopefulness, to me, is embedded in this idea of neuroplasticity. The brain isn't fixed. There's always a chance to learn, to change, to grow, to improve. It doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter what you've been through. It doesn't matter where you are. Hope is very real. And if hope is real, then hope for us in our relationship is also real.
Thank you so much for that. Now, that leads me to one of the last question that I have for you today, Todd.
Yeah.
Why are you doing this? What is your benefit? I'm not talking about the money. The money is the same for everybody. I'm talking of what is your satisfaction in this?
Oh, my father had this expression that he said all the time to me as a teenager. I didn't appreciate it then, but I do now. He said, the best thing about banging your head against the wall is how good it feels when you stop. And so many of us, I think, in our relationships can feel like we're just banging our head against the wall. Like we're just day in and day out, year in and year out, it's the same things, it's the same fights, it's the same frustration. How nice would it feel to stop? When I learned the Enneagram and learned how to be a coach and how to help people understand and use this tool, what I discovered was the gift of not banging your head on the wall anymore. Like that's what I offer to people, is the opportunity to stop banging your head against the wall. And to me, it fills my heart with joy to watch this happen, to be in the room when people, their shoulders drop and the weight is lifted and the connection is rekindled, and they look at their partner with that adoration and joy that they had in the beginning. And to see that, to be a part of it, to contribute to it, and give that gift to people, they can take it with them for the rest of their lives. There's such deep joy and satisfaction in that for me. I feel like I'm making the world a better place than I found it. And really, without being too religious, yes, I left the church, I left the ministry, but in many ways, I'm still answering my call, which is to bring my gifts to the world in a way that the world is a better place for it. And that's the joy I receive. That's why I do what I do.
That's a great call. That's a great call, really. All right, now, how can people find you, those who want to work with you, those who want to participate in your call? Because, this is not just for you alone, no?
The best way to find me is just to go to my website. My company is called Connect Fully. Connect fully with yourself, connect fully with the people who matter to you. Now, we live in a day and age where you can spell things the way you want to. So that is actually spelled with a K. It's KONNECTFULLY.com. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. I say reach out to me directly. I love to hear people's stories, to find out what's working for them, what isn't. I'm always still learning and evolving in my practice. And you can reach me just at todd@connectfully.com, and I'll answer every email that comes my way, because this is what I do. I connect with people, and I learn and I grow and I offer what I offer. So those are the ways to find me. And I really do hope to hear from folks, because it's such a joy to connect with people. What an age we live in, that I can connect with people in all over the world and find out what's working for them and what challenges, and see how I might be able to help or not. That happens too. So please reach out to me.
That's really lovely. Today I was talking to a friend in Germany. I was talking to her about partnership, the possibility of being able to participate or partner with the project that we are working on. how we help businesses with different type of services that we render to them, from video editing to content creation to a tourism project that we are working on. I was saying to her, this is a beautiful time to be alive, in that we are able to connect now with the power of internet. It doesn't matter whether you are living in New York, or you are in Belgium, or you are in Berlin, or you are in Rome, or you are maybe in Lagos or in Johannesburg. Now the world is literally a global village. So it is time for us to connect, all of us. It is more beautiful for us to be able to connect and do things together. There is no reason for us not to do that, because our ancestors didn't have this kind of time. 100 years ago, this time didn't exist for you to just pick up a call and you'll be able to have a lot of people under your call. You can call to Berlin right now in this moment. Somebody will pick it up and you'll be not just be talking, but you'll be seeing the person. This is a beautiful thing to do, a beautiful time to be alive. And this is the right time for us to make better connection. So thank you so much for this conversation today. I really very appreciate it. It's full of value. Really, it is. So how would you like to conclude? What is your final message to the people?
What a beautiful way to bring this conversation full circle, too. We began by talking about solitude and the inherent nature of being in the diaspora and experiencing that reality. And we closed our conversation talking about the possibility and the value and the joy of connection and the way that the world enables that as never before. So thank you so much. This has been a really joyful conversation to have with you, Obehi. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Really, really. Thank you.